So imagine it is, I don't know, maybe 6:30 in the morning.
Early.
Yeah, super early. You're standing in your kitchen, the sun is just coming up, and you are holding your absolute favorite coffee mug.
Oh, everyone has that one specific mug.
Right. You know the one. It has that perfect weight, the glaze is beautiful, maybe it was kind of expensive or a gift from someone you really care about.
Yeah, you're attached to it.
Exactly. But then you turn toward the counter, and it just slips right out of your fingers.
Oh, no.
Right, it hits the hardwood floor and just shatters into a dozen pieces.
A terrible start to the morning.
It really is. But here is the thing. In that exact fraction of a second, what happens inside your mind?
That is the ultimate question, isn't it?
It is. Because do you feel this heavy, sinking knot in your stomach? Like a sense of genuine distress that just kind of lingers over you for the rest of the morning?
Yeah, where it basically sours your whole mood during the commute.
Exactly. Or you just feel a quick little sting of disappointment followed almost immediately by a shrug.
Like, well, everything breaks eventually.
Right, you just grab the broom and move on, completely unaffected.
Yeah.
Because your answer to that question isn't just about how much you liked a ceramic cup.
No, not at all. It actually reveals the hidden psychological source code that is running your entire life.
Which is wild to think about. And welcome to today's deep dive, by the way.
Glad to be here.
Because that shattered mug is basically the perfect diagnostic tool for what we are talking about today.
It really is, because from the outside, anyone looking through your kitchen window just sees a person sweeping up ceramic shards.
Right, the outward behavior is exactly the same.
Completely identical. But internally, the machinery driving that response could be based on two entirely different foundations.
And we spend so much time in our modern culture, just obsessing over behavioral output.
Oh, constantly. What we do, what we achieve, how we react on the surface.
We take all these personality tests that spit out four-letter acronyms or numbers.
And we just wear those labels like name tags.
We do. We assume that our observable actions are basically the truest reflection of our identity.
We really want neat little boxes.
We want engineering-level precision for our personalities. We want society to point in a chart and just say, there it is.
Right, you're a type A or you're an introvert.
Exactly. Or you're a high achiever. But our mission for this deep dive is to basically completely shatter that categorization machine.
We are walking into the really fascinating, slightly muddy waters of ancient Buddhist psychology.
Yeah, and it's an incredibly sophisticated, honestly borderline intimidating framework.
It's so rewarding.
Absolutely. We want to help you compare 6 distinct character temperaments, figure out your own dominant traits, and understand how to choose the right mental practices.
Specifically targeted meditation.
Right. And ultimately, we want to look at the actual mechanics of transforming your mind.
It is a massive undertaking, but the map we have today is phenomenal.
So good. Where exactly is this map coming from?
So we are drawing our insights from a chapter exploring Buddhist psychology from a book written by Rev Thalangalle Ratana Thero.
Which is a fantastic resource.
It really is. And the source material actually pulls from a classical foundational text called the Visuddhimagga.
The path of purification, right?
Exactly. And the framework we are looking at from this text is the concept of the 6 character temperaments, or the Chakaritani.
And I'm telling you, this is going to force you to radically re-examine some of your most mundane daily habits.
Both for sure.
But before anyone listening starts trying to, permanently brand themselves with one of these 6 labels, we need to set a massive foundational rule.
Yes, very important.
Nobody, absolutely nobody, fits perfectly into just one box.
We are all complex combinations of these traits. The text is very adamant about that.
Right, these aren't static life sentences.
Not at all. They are conditioned tendencies. You might have a dominant temperament that dictates your baseline reactions, sure.
But most people display a hybrid of 2 or more, right?
Exactly. Furthermore, these traits can actually shift throughout different seasons of your life.
Which makes sense. I'm definitely not the exact same person I was 10 years ago.
Right. The entire point of the system is fluidity. I mean, if you couldn't change, there would be 0 point in diagnosing your starting point.
Fluidity is key here. But the central twist of the Visuddhimagga, the thing that completely rewired my brain when we were prepping this deep dive, is how it organizes these 6 temperaments.
It is so clever.
It doesn't just list them linearly, 1 through 6. It groups them into 3 distinct pairs.
Right. It takes the 6 and creates 3 sets of twins, basically.
And the pairing is the absolute genius of the system.
It really is, because they are grouped together because the 2 temperaments in each pair share nearly identical outward expressions.
If you just look at their behavior, their words, their body language, they look the same.
indistinguishable, but they arise from completely opposite mental roots.
Okay, so think about it like looking at two identical apps on your smartphone.
I love this analogy.
You download them, you open them up, and the user interfaces are exactly the same. The buttons are the same color, the menus are in the same layout.
The swipe features do the exact same thing.
Right. So from the user's perspective, they are identical. But if you were to plug that phone into a computer and look at the raw source code running underneath,
You'd see a totally different story.
exactly. You would see that one app is programmed in Python and the other is programmed in C++ test.
One is designed by a developer trying to steal your data, maybe.
Yeah, and the other is an open source project designed to protect your privacy.
The interface is basically a lie, or at least an incomplete truth.
Yes, the source code is where the reality lives.
And that analogy captures the danger of judging external behavior alone, because the outward actions of a person, that's just the user interface.
And society constantly rewards the user interface.
Of course. We reward people who are polite, who are productive, who are clean.
But the text insists that if you want to understand your own mind, you have to bypass the interface entirely.
You have to look at the hidden internal driver, the intention, to see what program is actually running.
So that is exactly what we're going to do with you today. Consider us your diagnostic technicians.
We are going to open up these 3 pairs of identical-looking apps and dig straight down into the source code.
And we're going to help you identify which program is running your mind. So let's start with the first pair.
The pair of temperaments that are naturally drawn to beauty, harmony, and pleasant aesthetics.
The gentle pair.
Right. So our first pair consists of the Raga Karita, which translates to the lustful or passionate temperament.
Okay, Raga Karita.
And the Sada Karita, which is the faithful or confident temperament.
And the source material actually points out that distinguishing between these two is one of the most difficult diagnostic challenges in the entire system.
Because their outward interface is just so incredibly appealing.
If you meet someone who embodies these traits, you instantly like them. Both the lustful temperament and the faithful temperament are just really gentle people.
They aren't abrasive at all. They walk calmly and gracefully.
They avoid sudden, jerky movements. They dress neatly, and they have this deep appreciation for beauty and art.
And cleanliness. They are notably generous. They have impeccable manners.
They respect others, and they actively seek out peaceful, harmonious surroundings.
And our culture highly values these traits.
Oh, absolutely. If you have a friend who is always perfectly put together, whose apartment is just impeccably clean.
Who speaks softly and is always handing out compliments.
Right. You probably view them as a highly evolved, maybe even spiritually advanced individual. You look at the interface and think, wow, what a wonderful person.
But the source code running beneath that lovely exterior can be entirely different.
Drastically different, right? Where does the fundamental split happen?
It happens at the root motivation. The Raga Karita, the lustful temperament, is driven by attachment.
Okay.
In the Pali language, this is tancha, which literally translates to thirst or craving.
Craving, got it.
And the Sada Karita, the faithful temperament, is driven by confidence and faith, known as sadar.
So craving versus faith, thirst versus confidence.
Exactly.
And the text gives us this brilliant set of self-reflection questions to really help us pull this pair apart.
It basically challenges you to stop cataloging what you were doing and start interrogating why you were doing it.
Which is so much harder. But we have a whole list of these scenarios to dive into because they take these heavy philosophical concepts and translate them into everyday life.
Let's look at the first theme, which is cleanliness and appearance.
Right. So the diagnostic question here is, why do you like to wear clean clothes? Or why do you keep your room meticulously clean?
So picture 2 people dedicating their entire Saturday morning to deep cleaning their apartments.
Okay, they're both scrubbing floors, organizing bookshelves, making everything pristine.
Right. The person operating from the Raga Karita source code, the craving temperament, is doing it to secure a pleasant sensory feeling for themselves.
They crave the comfort of a beautiful space.
Exactly. Furthermore, there's this deep element of validation seeking. They want guests to walk in and say, wow, you have such incredible taste.
Your home is so beautiful.
Right. The cleanliness is a mechanism to extract admiration from the environment.
And I have to admit, that hits a little close to home.
Oh, I think it does for a lot of people.
Because the number of times I've frantically cleaned my living room 10 minutes before friends arrive.
Yeah.
It's not because I'm suddenly overwhelmed by a desire for structural order.
No, it's a panic response.
Yeah. It's because I want the social currency of being perceived as someone who has their life together.
It's entirely about validation.
Exactly. But how does the Saddhakarita, the faithful temperament, approach that exact same act of sweeping the floor?
So the Siddha temperament cleans the room because they view cleanliness as a support for mindfulness and internal clarity.
Interesting.
In many monastic traditions, sweeping the temple grounds is actually considered a direct meditation practice.
Wow.
They aren't sweeping to impress visitors. They are aligning the external environment to support the internal discipline of the mind.
So they wear clean clothes out of a sense of right conduct and self-respect, not to draw the admiring eyes of others.
Right. The action is identical, but the lustful mind uses cleanliness to feed the ego, while the faithful mind uses it to quiet the ego.
That is such a fascinating distinction. Taking that a step further, let's look at the next diagnostic category, praise and generosity.
This is a big one.
The question is, why do you help others, and how do you internally react when someone praises you for it?
And this feels like a classic psychological trap because both of these temperaments are genuinely generous.
Right, they aren't faking the help.
No, they aren't faking it, but the mechanism of reward is completely different. The Raga Karita helps others or gives gifts because they crave the reciprocal appreciation.
They want to be seen as the good guy, the benefactor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when they inevitably receive that praise, they feel this huge rush of happiness.
But if you look closely at the mind in that moment, the praise acts like a sugar hit, doesn't it?
Yes. Instantly they want more. The ego consumes the praise, swells up, and just gets hungrier.
And if they help someone and don't get a thank you, they feel deeply resentful.
They feel owed. The generosity was basically a transaction.
Wow. But the Saita person approaches generosity without that transactional ledger.
Right. They help simply because they genuinely wish to alleviate suffering or bring joy to another person.
So the joy of the other person is the entirety of the reward.
Exactly. And when the Sada person is praised, the text notes a very specific internal reaction.
What happens?
They feel a quiet sense of gratitude, but their internal state remains unchanged. They don't inflate.
So the praise doesn't become a narcotic they need to chase.
No. They recognize the praise as a pleasant sound, a nice social interaction, and then they just let it go completely.
Which perfectly brings us back to our opening scenario about handling loss and attraction.
Huh.
The shattered coffee mug. The question is, what happens when your favorite possession is damaged or lost? We talked about the outward reaction, but let's look at the source code of that moment.
For the Ragakarita, because their foundational root is tansha, that thirst and attachment, the loss of the object, creates a profound disruption.
Because they had sort of woven their sense of well-being into the existence of that mug.
Exactly. When the mug breaks, a piece of their happiness breaks with it. The distress lingers because the mind is continually reaching out for something that no longer exists.
And that friction, right,
Yeah.
between what the mind wants and what reality is actually presenting, that causes extended suffering.
Yes. The faithful temperament, however, doesn't lack appreciation for the mug.
Right, they aren't emotionally dead or detached in some cold way.
Yeah.
They love the beautiful glaze just as much as the other person.
Perhaps even more because they are truly present with it. But when it shatters, the Saddhakarita experiences a brief, natural disappointment followed by an immediate recognition of impermanence.
Which is huge in this philosophy.
The foundational reality of Buddhist psychology is that all conditioned things are subject to arising and passing away.
Everything is temporary.
And the faithful mind knows this. They enjoyed the mug while it lasted, and when it breaks, their mind basically says, ah, yes, the nature of things is to break.
So they accept the new reality without that friction.
Precisely.
And that friction is the suffering. And this also applies to what draws us in initially, doesn't it?
Yes, the text asks what naturally attracts you. The lustful temperament is magnetically pulled toward supreme sensory comfort.
Beautiful people, rich food, soft fabrics, mesmerizing music.
Right. They are chasing the pleasant feeling on the surface of the skin, on the tongue, in the ear.
While the faithful temperament, they are certainly capable of enjoying a good meal, but their deep magnetic attraction is toward noble qualities.
Yes, they are drawn to wise teachers, profound teachings, acts of deep moral integrity.
So their attraction isn't based on sensory pleasure, but on spiritual resonance.
Exactly. And this divergence is incredibly stark even when you look at how these two types approach spiritual practice itself.
Right, the diagnostic question here asks, why do you visit a temple? Or, to kind of modernize it, why do you sign up for a silent meditation retreat? or go to a yoga ashram.
And this is where we see the phenomenon of spiritual materialism.
Oh, that's a great term.
The Ragakarita person goes to the retreat for the aesthetic. They go for the vibes.
They want to be surrounded by the beautiful, serene architecture.
Right. They want the soothing chanting in the background. They want to meet other attractive, like-minded people.
They go because sitting in that environment makes them feel relaxed and special. It's essentially a spiritual spa day.
Exactly. They are consuming the atmosphere to generate a pleasant feeling.
They are consuming peace the same way they would consume a luxury vacation.
Yes. But the Sada person isn't there for the architecture or the ambient lighting. They go to their retreat to do the grueling, difficult work of cultivating wisdom.
They are there for the truth, even if the truth is really uncomfortable.
The setting is totally secondary. The internal work is primary.
To solidify this entire dynamic, the text offers one of the most elegant analogies.
It really is beautiful.
It asks us to picture two people walking together and stopping at the edge of a pond to look at a stunningly beautiful lotus flower in full bloom.
Okay, so the Ragakarita person looks at the lotus, their eyes are wide with appreciation, and their immediate reflexive thought is, that is incredibly beautiful. I wish I could take it home.
Now, I want to push on this a bit because this is where modern Western psychology and ancient Buddhist psychology really seem to collide.
So.
Well, almost everyone listening to that reaction thinks, what is the problem with that? It's a pretty flower. Wanting to put it in a vase on your kitchen table is the most natural human response in the world. Why pathologize a simple moment of appreciation?
I get that. It is entirely normalized in our culture, and from a conventional standpoint, it seems harmless. But we are looking at the micro movements of the mind. In that exact millisecond, when the thought transitions from, this is beautiful, to, I wish I could take it home, a profound psychological shift has occurred.
The mind has instantly generated craving.
Yes. It has moved from presence to acquisition. You have just taken a pure moment of simple appreciation and converted it into a condition for your own future dissatisfaction.
Because you've created a gap between what you have and what you want.
Exactly. Let's actually trace the neuroscience and the psychology of that moment.
Okay, let's do it.
If you can't reach the flower to take it home, you walk away feeling a slight, lingering sense of deprivation. You didn't get what you wanted.
Right, a little micro disappointment.
But let's say you do wade into the water, pluck the flower, and take it home. You put it in a vase. For a day, you get a dopamine hit every time you look at it.
Sure.
But within 3 days, it begins to wither. The petals turn brown and fall off. Now, the very object that you grasped to bring you happiness is generating sadness and decay right in your living room.
Wow. The attachment guaranteed the eventual suffering.
Yes. That is the mechanics of craving. The grasping itself is the problem, not the flower.
So how does the Sadhakarita person, standing right next to them, react to the exact same visual stimulus?
The faithful person looks at the pristine lotus, fully absorbing its beauty without needing to own it. Their internal dialogue is more like, how wonderful this is. And yet, this flower reminds me of the Buddhist teaching on impermanence.
So they see its peak beauty, but their wisdom simultaneously sees its inevitable decay.
Right. They don't try to freeze time or possess the object. The exact same flower, processing through 2 different sets of source code, generates craving in one mind and profound, liberating wisdom in the other.
2 identical interfaces, stopping to admire nature, but entirely divergent outcomes. One mind gets heavier, the other mind gets lighter.
It's a perfect illustration.
And that concept bridges us perfectly into the second major diagnostic category. Because if the first pair was defined by their magnetic pull toward beauty and smoothing things over,
the second pair operates on an entirely different frequency.
Yeah, we are leaving behind those who want to grasp the pretty things and moving to the pair who immediately, almost obsessively, zeroes in on the flaws, the sharp edges, and the intricate details of the world around them.
We are entering the domain of the sharp pair.
Okay, who do we have here?
This consists of the dosa karita, which translates to the hateful or aversive temperament,
Dosa karita.
and the buddhi karita, which is the wise or highly intelligent temperament.
And much like our first pair, the outward behavioral similarities between these two are just uncanny.
They are constantly conflated both by the individuals themselves and by society.
So what are those outward similarities? I mean, these are the traits of the ultimate problem solvers, right?
Exactly. Both of these temperaments possess a frighteningly strong ability to notice differences, evaluate complex situations, and analyze people, systems, or events.
They walk into a room and instantly notice that one picture frame is crooked.
They detect typos in a document that 10 other people reviewed and completely missed.
They think critically, they ask relentless, piercing questions, they deeply value accuracy.
And they have an absolute visceral intolerance for carelessness, inefficiency, or disorder.
And in our modern corporate and academic cultures, we elevate these traits.
Oh, massively. We call these people detail-oriented, analytical, or high-standards operators.
But the text issues a massive warning here, doesn't
It
it?
does. Because these characteristics are shared, we routinely fall into the trap of mistaking harsh criticism for deep wisdom.
And conversely, we sometimes mistake quiet wisdom for passive criticism.
Right.
Because the cynical critic sounds incredibly smart. We often assume the person pointing out all the flaws must be the wisest person in the room.
But let's look at the source code. What is actually driving the dosa carita, the hateful temperament?
The inner core for the dosa carita is aversion, which is dosa in Pali.
Right. Their mind doesn't just notice imperfections. It naturally gravitates toward them and latches onto them with a sense of irritation, resentment, or harsh judgment.
So when they point out a flaw, there is an edge of anger to it.
Exactly. And why? Because the reality of the world simply does not match their internal, rigid expectations of how things should be.
They are perpetually annoyed that the universe is messy. They look at a white wall with a single black scuff mark, and all they can see is the scuff mark.
The rest of the wall basically ceases to exist.
The aversion acts as a filter that blocks out all the good.
But the Buddhaghosa, the wise temperament, operates from a root of wisdom, or panya.
Okay, so how do they see the wall?
Well, their mind also sees the scuff mark. They aren't blind to the flaws, but their mind seeks understanding rather than fault-finding.
They investigate the imperfection objectively.
Right. When reality is messy, they don't get angry. They get intensely curious about the mechanics of the mess, and they approach it with a layer of compassion.
Okay, let's run this sharp pair through the self-reflection diagnostic.
Yeah.
For anyone listening who prides themselves on being highly logical or straight shooter, this section requires some profound honesty.
It really does.
Let's look at the first scenario, mistakes and discussions. The question is, when someone on your team or your partner makes an obvious mistake, what is the very first micro-reaction in your mind?
The dosa carita sees the mistake and experiences an immediate physiological spike of irritation.
Their reaction is emotional, even if they dress it up in logical language.
Exactly. They feel personally offended by the incompetence. If they are in a discussion or debate, their primary objective is to verbally corner the other person and prove them wrong.
It's a battle for intellectual dominance.
Yes. The argument is basically a weapon to punish the other person for being incorrect.
But the Buddhaghosa notices the exact same obvious mistake, and their first internal movement is inquiry.
Right, they wonder, why did this happen? Was the instruction unclear? Were they tired? How can we systemically correct this so it doesn't happen again?
So they don't experience that spike of anger.
No. And in a debate, the wise temperament isn't trying to win. They are trying to understand every single viewpoint, even the flawed ones, to synthesize a broader truth.
Which leads directly into the next diagnostic. Pointing out flaws. Why do you correct people? When you tell someone they are doing it wrong, what is the internal engine driving those words?
Well, the aversive temperament corrects people because they simply cannot tolerate the discomfort of the carelessness.
The flaw is an irritant, like a stone in their shoe.
Exactly, and they point it out to relieve their own annoyance. The correction is often delivered with sarcasm or condescension.
Whereas the wise temperament corrects people out of a genuine desire for the other person's growth.
The goal is to elevate the person, not to punish them for the error.
And the ultimate mirror for this pair is how they handle receiving criticism themselves.
Oh, this is the ultimate litmus test.
Right. If you truly want to know if your analytical mind is rooted in aversion or wisdom, look at how you take feedback when you are the one who made the mistake.
The dosa carita becomes instantly defensive, hostile, or deeply upset. Because their ego is wrapped up in being right, any criticism is perceived as an attack on their identity.
They will immediately deflect or point out a flaw in the person criticizing them.
Right, classical deflection. But the Buddhaghosa pauses. They override the initial ego reflex and they ask two questions. Is what this person's saying factually true? And is it useful for my development?
And if it is, they accept it with gratitude.
Exactly.
And this diagnostic difference isn't just about interpersonal skills. It is anchored in one of the most massive philosophical concepts in the entire text, and really in all of Buddhist thought.
Yes, the text connects this sharp pair to the understanding of dependent origination, or peka samuppada.
Let's slow down and unpack this because while it sounds like dense academic philosophy, it is actually the most practical lens for viewing daily life.
It really is. Dependent origination is the profound understanding that absolutely all phenomena, every event, every thought, every physical object, arise purely due to a complex web of causes and conditions.
Nothing happens in a vacuum.
Nothing is self-created. So when a crisis occurs, when a project fails, or when a relationship breaks down, the aversive mind, the dosa carita, abandons causality and always asks one highly charged question.
Who's to blame?
Exactly. They need a villain. They need a target for their dosa, their aversion. If there is a villain, they can direct their anger, which feels powerful.
The anger gives them an illusion of control.
But the wise mind, the buddhikarita operating through the lens of dependent origination, asks a fundamentally different question. What were the myriad causes and conditions that intersected to give rise to this failure?
They understand events through complex causality rather than through simplistic personal judgment.
Right.
This concept begs for an analogy. Let's say a newly constructed multi-million-dollar commercial building suddenly collapses in the middle of the night.
A total disaster.
Right, a catastrophic structural failure, a massive pile of rubble. Thankfully, it was empty, so no one is hurt, but the financial and professional disaster is absolute. The next morning, two people arrive at the perimeter of the disaster site. One is a highly leveraged investor who put a significant portion of their wealth into the project. The other is a master forensic structural engineer hired to investigate.
This perfectly isolates the mechanics of the mind. They're both staring at the exact same twisted steel and shattered concrete.
They both fully recognize the severity of the failure. But what is their internal process?
Well, the angry investor embodying the dosa carita is pacing frantically. They are yelling at the police officers, demanding the phone number of the project manager.
Screaming, "Who did this? Who screwed up the concrete pour? Someone is going to pay for this."
Right, I want heads to roll. Their entire analytical capability is hijacked by the need to assign blame and discharge their anger.
Their judgment is blinded by the search for a singular, punishable villain.
And what is the forensic investigator doing?
The investigator embodying the Buddhi Karita is completely silent. They weren't looking for a person to yell at. They are walking the perimeter, pulling out a magnifying glass, and carefully examining the stress fractures in the concrete pillars.
They are noting the oxidation patterns on the exposed rebar.
Right. They are calculating the soil composition and the recent rainfall data. They are attempting to understand the physics of the failure.
They know that yelling at the project manager won't explain the load-bearing calculations. They are looking for the causes and conditions.
That analogy is flawless because it captures the most misunderstood principle in this entire section. There is a common misconception that being spiritual or wise means adopting a toxic positivity, pretending that everything is perfect, or ignoring faults.
And the text completely shatters that idea. Wisdom does not mean ignoring the collapsed building.
Right.
The wise person sees the exact same catastrophic mistake as the angry person. But the dosa carita discriminates through the lens of aversion, finding fault to assign blame.
While the Buddhi Karita discriminates through the lens of wisdom, investigating the causes with a cool, compassionate, objective understanding in order to prevent it from happening again.
It's a huge distinction.
So, we have explored the gentle pair, whose minds are pulled toward grasping beauty. We have dissected the sharp pair, whose minds are pushed away by aversion to flaws.
And now we move into our third and final pairing.
And for anyone navigating the modern, hyperstimulated, notification-driven digital age, this pair is going to feel painfully familiar.
Oh, absolutely.
We are looking at the minds that aren't pulling or pushing, but are just spinning their wheels in the mud. We are looking at those who struggle to maintain focus on anything at all.
This brings us to the unsettled pair. This comprises the moha carita, the deluded temperament,
Okay, Mohakari.
and the vitaka carita, which is the speculative or discursive temperament.
And the source material notes that diagnostically, these two are often the absolute hardest to distinguish from one another in daily life.
Because if you just look at their behavior, they both look like a portrait of a completely scattered, unanchored mind.
Both of these individuals suffer from chronic distraction. They start a project, abandon it halfway through, and start another.
They appear physically and mentally unsettled, shifting in their seats, checking their phones constantly.
They are highly indecisive. They suffer from terrible short-term memory. And if you ask them to sit still and meditate,
They will find it agonizingly difficult to maintain sustained concentration.
both possess fundamentally unstable minds. But true to the framework, the hidden engine generating that restlessness is vastly different.
Right. So the Mohakarita is dominated by delusion known as moha. Now, this isn't delusion in the psychiatric sense of hallucinating. In this psychology, moha refers to a heavy, thick mental fog.
It results in confusion, deep uncertainty, mental dullness.
And a pervasive lack of clear comprehension about the nature of reality.
The text actually boils the Mohakarita down to 3 words: does not know. The mind is simply clouded. It's a passive ignorance.
But the Vitakka operates on the opposite end of the energy spectrum. They are dominated by Vitakka, which means initial application of thought, but in excess, it turns into relentless discursive thinking.
It generates continuous conceptual activity, leading to a state called papaññāka, or mental proliferation.
Papaññāka is a fascinating concept. It is the snowballing of thought. The mind takes one simple sensory input and instantly spins a massive, complex narrative around it.
It is basically the ancient word for mental doom-scrolling.
That's a great way to put it.
If the Moha temperament does not know, the Vitakka temperament thinks way too much. One suffers from a total lack of clear ideas, and the other generates a suffocating avalanche of ideas.
Right. The Vitakka mind compares everything. They plan for scenarios that will never happen.
They lie in bed at 2 a.m. revisiting a slightly awkward conversation they had in an elevator 5 years ago, analyzing what they should have said instead.
We've all been there. But the vital distinction lies not in the outward restlessness, but in the internal mechanism of that restlessness. Why is the mind vibrating?
And the text provides another masterful analogy to illustrate this distinction. It asks us to visualize 2 people arriving simultaneously at a complex, unmarked 4-way temperament stands at the crossroads, looks down the 4 paths, and says, I have absolutely no idea which road to take.
Their mind shuts down. They are paralyzed by a heavy lack of understanding. They simply cannot process the spatial reality to make a choice.
It is a paralysis of emptiness. But the Vitakka person stands at that exact same intersection, looks down the paths, and their brain goes into hyperdrive.
Right. They say, okay, if I take the north road, it might be shorter, but the elevation gain could be steeper, which means I'll burn more calories, and I only have a little water left.
But if I take the east road, there might be a river. But what if the bridge is washed out? I need to calculate the exact distance of all 4 routes, weigh the topographical data, and anticipate the weather patterns for the next 3 hours before you take a single step.
They are paralyzed by mental exhaustion. They overanalyze every microvariable until the sheer volume of data prevents them from moving.
Both individuals remain standing perfectly still at the crossroads, achieving nothing, but for entirely opposite reasons. One is frozen by too little data, the other by too much processing.
Exactly. Let's run a self-reflection diagnostic on how this plays out in the real world, particularly when it comes to trying to process new information.
Okay, let's say both of these people are assigned to read a dense, complex chapter of a philosophy book or a difficult technical manual for their job.
The Mohakarita, dealing with that thick mental dullness, genuinely struggles to grasp the core meaning. They read a full page, their eyes physically scan every word, but they reach the bottom and realize they absorbed absolutely nothing.
The information simply bounces off the fog, they remain confused, and usually just give up.
Right. The Vitakka, however, reads the first sentence and understands the meaning perfectly. But instead of reading the second sentence, their mind grabs the concept and runs away with it.
They stop, argue with the author in their head, relate the sentence to a podcast they heard last week, think about how they would rewrite the sentence to make it better.
And suddenly, 10 minutes have passed and they are still on paragraph 1, exhausted by their own tangents.
This divergence becomes incredibly pronounced when these 2 temperaments attempt to meditate.
For anyone who has struggled on the meditation cushion, this diagnostic is vital.
When the Mohakarita sits down, closes their eyes, and tries to focus on the breath, their mind almost immediately begins to sink.
It becomes heavy, lethargic, and dull. They start nodding off. It is a sinking energy.
But when the Vitakka sits down and closes their eyes, it is like someone just pulled the lever on a slot machine inside their skull.
The mind races. Thoughts of the past, anxieties about the future, creative ideas for a screenplay they will never write.
An endless stream of mental noise. The body is still, but the mind is running a marathon.
This is where we reach a critical juncture in the framework. We have diagnosed the problems, now we have to look at the cure.
And I want to pause here and challenge a very common modern assumption. If both of these people, the deluded mind and the overthinking mind, have zero concentration, and both are struggling to stay present, Why can't we just prescribe them the exact same mindfulness app?
It seems logical, right?
Yeah, why not just give them the standard instruction?
Yeah.
Just sit and watch your breath. Won't the same medicine cure the same symptom of restlessness?
If we look at the sophisticated mechanics of Buddhist psychology, the answer is a definitive, resounding no.
Why not?
You cannot use the same medicine because, as we've discovered, the underlying diseases are completely different. The Buddha taught that liberation from suffering isn't achieved just by thinking about reality, but by directly, piercingly knowing it.
While both temperaments need mindfulness, the application of that mindfulness must be radically tailored to the specific illness.
Exactly.
So how does that actually work in practice?
Well, the Mohakarita, whose mind is wrapped in a heavy, sleepy fog, needs an intervention that wakes them up. If you give them a calming, soothing meditation, they will just fall asleep faster.
That makes total sense. So what do they need?
They require the active development of sharp wisdom, vibrant mindfulness, and clear comprehension. They need practices that stimulate inquiry, that force the mind to actively investigate reality, to pierce through that heavy ignorance.
They need light and energy. So you prescribe a practice that sharpens the edge of the mind. But what about the overthinker?
The Vitutthakarita doesn't need to be woken up. Their mind is already running at thousands of RPMs. They are too active.
Right. So if you give a highly analytical, speculative mind a complex, analytical meditation like deconstructing the philosophical layers of dependent origination.
They will just use it as fuel to spin 10,000 new thoughts. It will make their papiñaka worse.
So what's their remedy?
They require the cultivation of deep tranquility, which is called samatha. They need extreme simplicity and sustained, single-pointed attention.
Like what? Specific?
They need to stare at a simple colored disc, or focus solely on the physical sensation of breath at the tip of the nose, aggressively dropping every concept that arises. They need to simplify the data stream until the noise finally quiets down.
That makes perfect sense. It's the difference between giving a triple espresso to someone who is nodding off at the steering wheel versus giving that same triple espresso to someone who is currently having a severe panic attack.
Perfect analogy. The espresso cures the first and destroys the second. You have to know the baseline condition before you write the prescription.
Which brings us to the ultimate purpose of this entire framework. We haven't spent all this time analyzing the 6 temperaments just to give you interesting cocktail party conversation.
No, this is highly practical.
You've likely recognized pieces of yourself in this deep dive. Maybe you realized your desire for a clean house is rooted in the raga craving for validation.
Maybe you saw your own dosa aversion in how harshly you judge your coworkers.
Or maybe you recognize the exhausting Vitakka slot machine mind that keeps you up at night. The question now is, what do you do with this diagnosis?
How do you actually use this to transform your mind?
Because the absolute worst takeaway from this framework would be to treat it like a psychological zodiac sign and say, well, the text says I'm a dosakarita, so I guess I'm just going to be angry and critical forever. It's just who I am.
That would be a complete betrayal of the text. The framework emphasizes a profoundly optimistic and compassionate reality. None of these categories are your permanent, unchangeable identity.
Right. They're conditioned tendencies, known in Pali as sakar.
They are neurological and psychological pathways that have been built up by thousands of repeated past actions, habits, and present conditions.
And the beauty of a conditioned habit is that what has been built can be dismantled. The pathways can be rewired.
Precisely. They are capable of complete transformation through the 3 core pillars of Buddhist practice: morality, or ethics, sila concentration, samadhi, and wisdom panya.
So through the dedicated application of these 3 pillars, every single one of these flawed temperaments can be gradually purified and transformed into its highest expression.
So this system isn't a sorting hat trying to put you in a permanent house. It is a medical chart.
It is exactly like a skilled, ancient physician prescribing highly specific, targeted medicines for different internal illnesses.
Yes. In the classical tradition, great meditation masters did not just hand out a generic, one-size-fits-all meditation instruction.
Right. They would observe a student, diagnose their root temperament, and then recommend a highly specific meditation subject.
Which is called a kamahana. And this is designed explicitly to neutralize that student's specific defilements, or kilesa.
Matching the unique contours of your temperament to the correct meditation subject is the secret to natural, efficient, and profound progress on the path.
It is the ultimate personalized medicine for the mind. If your source code is running heavy with dosa, full of aversion and anger toward flaws, the teacher wouldn't give you a meditation that focuses on the gross, decaying nature of the physical body.
Doing so would be disastrous. It would just generate more disgust and feed the aversion.
Right. Instead, they prescribe metta, loving-kindness meditation, forcing the mind to actively generate goodwill to counteract the habit of judgment.
Because the ultimate goal of the Noble Eightfold Path is not to become a specific, idealized type of person. You aren't trying to become the ultimate Buddhaghosa.
No, the goal is the complete and total liberation of the mind from the three root poisons that drive all of these imbalances.
Greed, which is lobha, hatred, dosa, and delusion, moha.
It's about bringing the mind into perfect, unshakable balance.
And the text outlines these beautiful, almost poetic final transformations that occur when a practitioner accurately applies the right medicine, strengthens their mindfulness, and allows wisdom to deepen.
Let's look at the end game for each of these source codes. The transformation is profound.
Okay, let's start with the lustful temperament.
So, the Raga Karita, who spent their entire life anxiously chasing beauty, grasping at sensory pleasures, and seeking validation. Through practice, their grasping relaxes, and they develop a deep, unshakable contentment.
They can finally enjoy the beauty of the lotus flower without ever needing to pluck it from the pond.
Right, they no longer need external acquisition to feel internally complete.
And what about the hateful temperament, the dosa karita? They lived in a state of perpetual irritation, always finding the flaws and reacting with anger.
Through practice, they cultivate profound loving kindness and patience. Their sharp eye still sees the flaws in the world. They don't become blind, but they respond to those flaws with gentle care and a desire to heal rather than a desire to punish.
Then there's the deluded temperament, the moha karita, who wandered through life in a heavy, confused fog, unable to grasp the nature of reality.
For them, the fog lifts. Through the application of energetic mindfulness, they finally gain sharp, penetrating clarity and clear comprehension.
Beautiful. And the faithful temperament, the sadhakarita, who were beautifully devoted and generous, but perhaps lacked deep intellectual discernment.
Their blind faith matures and crystallizes into true, unshakable wisdom.
And the wise temperament, the buddhikarita, who were already analytical and objective.
They drop the conceptual analysis and deepen their insight even further, moving beyond merely intellectualizing the philosophy to experiencing the direct, liberating realization of truth.
And finally, the speculative temperament, the Vitakka Karita, who suffered from the exhausting slot machine mind, constantly overanalyzing and proliferating thoughts.
They finally, at long last, learn the profound relief of inner stillness. The noise stops. The mind rests.
Every single practitioner, no matter how flawed their starting point, progresses toward the exact same ultimate goal, the complete cessation of suffering.
It is a phenomenal roadmap. It requires brutal honesty to diagnose yourself, but the promise at the end of the road is absolute freedom from the very mechanisms that are currently driving your stress.
So let's take a deep breath and conceptually recap the massive journey we've just been on.
It's been a lot of ground covered.
We started by tearing down the illusion of the user interface. We realized that we cannot judge our progress or the progress of others merely by looking at outward behaviors.
We have to be brave enough to look at the source code.
We dove into the gentle pair, forcing ourselves to ask if our nice, neat behaviors are actually driven by the grasping of attachment or the open hands of faith.
We examined the sharp pair, challenging our own intellect to see if our critical eye is fueled by the heat of aversion or the cool, investigative light of wisdom.
And we navigated the unsettled pair, learning to distinguish between a mind paralyzed by the heavy fog of confusion and a mind exhausted by the frantic overthinking of mental proliferation.
The grand takeaway is that this ancient framework is not a personality quiz designed to limit you. It is a highly sophisticated diagnostic tool for your own mental liberation.
It is the necessary first step to figuring out exactly which specific medicine your mind needs to heal, rewire, and awaken.
It is intensely practical, deeply challenging, and ultimately incredibly empowering.
As we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over on your own as you go about the rest of your day.
I want you to pay close, unvarnished attention to exactly how your mind reacted to this deep dive over the last hour.
Did you find yourself wanting to memorize all the Pali terms and visually map out the categories because the symmetry of the system sounded beautiful and pleasing?
Did you actively hunt for logical flaws in our explanation of dependent origination, waiting for us to make a mistake?
Or did your brain just spin completely out of control, generating dozens of anxious tangents as you tried to calculate exactly which percentage of the 6 types you perfectly fit into?
Don't ignore that reaction.
The very way you just listened to this information, the way your mind processed this audio, is the ultimate real-time clue to discovering exactly which temperament source code is running your mind right now.
It's the perfect place to start.
Thank you so much for exploring these muddy waters with us. We will see you next time.